What is up? Welcome to the Podioslave podcast. My name is Nate, and I'm back. Fucking stoked to be back with my fellow nerds here. Episode 110, hanging with you guys. And stoked to be back. How you guys doing?
Good, man. The gang's back together. It's Anthony here. We get Tony. We get the whole gang. We're a three-piece, three musketeers, right?
We're back, baby. Yeah, we're fully back. We are so back. Ed Helms in the Hangover. We are back. Yes, let's do this.
Yep. That's what I was trying to do. Can you smell what the nerd is cooking?
Ooh, I like that. Yes. Don't come after us, Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah, copyright infringement.
But the gang's all back. We got a fun one tonight. We were joined by another guest, right? So we're on a hot streak of having additional people to join us for the conversation. Tony, who did we just chat with?
We just chatted with Casey Cavaliere. Coming off tour with the Wonder Years. He's the guitarist of the Wonder Years. And they just finished their, 40 some odd, right around their date tour in February and March, late March finished up. We wanted to get a recap. We wanted to hear what it was like putting all that stuff together, getting out there. How do you pack? All that fun stuff, right? We hit it all. And he's a podcaster with the record process. He's a producer, engineer type as well, and a little bit of coaching on the side. So all that stuff's in the show notes. Go down, click on it, listen to Casey. He was a great guest. This is a blast to record. Really excited for everybody to check it out. So thank you for clicking and listen to our conversation with Casey Cavaliere right here. Hey everybody, Tony here. If you like what you hear, go back and check out some of our other interviews. We've had Peanut from 311, we've had Frank Turner, we had Benny Horowitz, we recently also had Vinny Caruana of The Movie Life, and many others back there. There's a bunch of really cool conversations, 2+ years of pods back there of us just nerding out and enjoying ourselves. So check us out. Go to podioslave.com for all things nerdery. Thanks.
Good Lord, this is like a whole bit in and of itself.
It really is, yeah. Nate's in the pub.
Yeah, do you guys use the video for this? So have people seen like the background? Wow, okay, well, let me take a minute. No, I couldn't possibly do it justice. You know what I will do, though? Maybe here's a little. I'm going to go ahead and you'll hate me forever for this, but I'm going to go ahead and screenshot that. Yep. And then whenever this goes live, that's going to be the second photo. I'm going to be like swipe left to see what we were talking about at the top.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome.
All right, Casey, appreciate you coming on the podcast, Podioslave podcast, chatting with us tonight.
Yes, thank you, fellas. Appreciate it. I'm here. I'm ready. Let's do it.
So we were thinking, we were jogging the memory banks. We actually searched the web a little bit. Have you guys ever played the state of Maine? Because that's where Tony and I live now. That's where we're all from. But have you ever played Maine?
Yes, we have played Maine.
And we missed it. Fuck.
We played one show in Maine. It was at like oh my God. I don't even really know how to describe it. First of all, Maine, a beautiful state. Also,
Thank you.
Such an eerie, haunting state as well in its own way, because it's like you get the charm of the northeastern aesthetic, and you get those like beautiful fall seasons, right? But also you get all the spookiness of everything twisted and like old about the Northeast as well. The place we played in Maine was, I can't for the life of me. I'm the worst member of the band to talk to when it comes to specifics. Dan is actually pretty good, probably because he's been the only one that hasn't really had anything to drink for our whole career. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I don't want to think so. But he's pretty much a steel trap when it comes to that. But and maybe it'll come to me later on. But we have played a show up there with a band. Are y'all familiar with a band called Energy from years past?
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Bridge 9. Yep.
Yes, indeed. I feel like they are from the Boston area, and I feel like I want to say it was a show with them or somebody else. but we have played up there, and it was effectively just like a DIY garage.
Okay.
And like finding the place was like it was only marked by like straight up out of a horror movie, like a
up near Stephen King, probably.
Like a piece of plywood spray painted that said, I think it was maybe The Cave or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I forget to say that too.
It was
Called it,
Bucksport.
like, you know, right. That okay. So it is in fact called The Cave, right?
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about. Okay, great. Right. See, I told you. Yeah, I told you it was going to come. That's the only time I think we've ever played in Maine proper. Well, this is being taped, so will be quoted, but you know,
someone will
hold me
figure
for
it
sure.
out, right?
But that was probably one of the more memorable ones, like I said, because it was just finding it was us like driving with the van and trailer down effectively like almost like dirt or gravel roads, and then finding dead ending at a cemetery, and then some guy comes out like shirtless with something in his hand, and we're like, "You're the caretaker." We literally just have to turn around, but we can't. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that was an interesting one for sure. Thanks for asking.
That had to be probably early on in the band's career, in your career, right?
That was probably a minute ago. Yeah. I'd have to say, I mean, over 10 years, again, the older you get, you know, we're counting records in decades now. It's going to get, it's all downhill from here. But it was a good bit of time ago, you know, the deep trenches of the van touring days for sure. Yeah.
We call that show regret. We missed that show, but I guess we didn't see the ad on MySpace. So it is what it is.
That's probably how far back it was.
Yeah, that's 100%. I'm sure there A, wasn't an ad, and B, I'm sure a lot of people missed that show. In fact, I think whoever was supposed to headline that and didn't show up because like someone was sick or whatever, and I think they like didn't want to. I think they like didn't want to pay us or whatever, and we were like, but we showed up and the people showed up too, and we like played the show, and they're like, yeah, but you weren't the headliner. So I think it might have been Energy, because Energy would be that band, if anybody knows Energy, that like would do super well in Bucksport, Maine for like all obvious reasons. If no one's familiar, look up the band Energy on Bridge 9. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
And look up Bucksport too. I mean,
and look up Bucksport. Sure. Yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
the Punch the Clock album looks like it was from Maine. That scene from the album cover.
Yep.
Dude, right?
There you go.
Yeah. It's destined. It's probably why we were like, oh my God, this is their biggest market, Bucksport. You know, like, I mean, and I love that band, and I love, you know, those people were great, and those tours were super fun. But yeah, what a show. I hope it was Energy, because if it wasn't on that show, and I'm just remembering it wrong and placing them there, I'm sorry to my friends.
the internet sleuths will be out for that one. They always are.
They always are. They'll come to me. Well, I'm probably wrong. I'm sure of it. I've given up worrying about that stuff.
So we wanted to have you on, Casey, to talk. You guys just wrapped a 40-date tour, right? Across the country, all over the place, everywhere you can think of. And it was the first real big tour for you guys since the pandemic, right? So, and you were doing album anniversary stuff. So it was, we had to find out how this came about, why you guys did it, why, all that stuff. We love that stuff. So you guys just got back, you got done. What are your first kind of feelings now that you've kind of gotten home, rested a little bit? Where you at headspace wise?
Yeah, I'll say it is an overwhelming palette of emotions. It was, I mean, I guess it kind of goes without saying that, yeah, it's going to be somewhat of an intense experience, kind of going 0 to fucking 100 with, you know, not really touring almost at all, just playing 1 or 2 shows here and there. And then we had kind of done like what I'll call was like the warm-up stretching back in December, where we did a handful of Northeast shows. Mm-hmm. So it hadn't been completely devoid of touring and playing for real people in that 2 years, but nothing like the undertaking of an actual like full US A market headline run. Mm-hmm. Let alone the fact that it was, you know, 28 songs a night or something like that we ended up doing for the set list, both Upsides and Suburbia, all the way through back to back. So yeah, it was a chore. Physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that. Yeah, I was 39 it was almost 40 shows, I think. But yeah, it was long, and you forget, just like when I don't know how many of you guys are runners here in the group, but it's kind of like you take a week off, even when you're at a good place, and that next week back, you're like, man, do I suck at this again?
Right.
And now, so I didn't think that we sucked at it, but you forget how taxing it can be to play that many songs and, flip the script on a routine, where I call it almost like tour jet lag, because our schedule at home now, we do not stay up in our most productive, most high energy hours for the last 2 years. We're definitely not between the hours of 9 and 12,
Right.
At night. So that alone takes some getting used to. The first week is really rough and feels like you're just straight up jet lag. And on top of that, if you want to talk about how things all came together over the course of the pandemic, where this tour had to get rebooked and shifted and chopped and screwed, its original form, had it starting not on the opposite side of the country from where we are located. That's not how this one worked out. So we actually started with the West Coast leg of that tour. So the tour started with us, doing a quick 3 time zone hop just to make things even more interesting. So, and then worked our way back. But, I'm standing here as proof that we did survive.
Yeah. Well, and then 9 p.m. out there is, geez, that's midnight here, right? So,
You know what? Honestly, I stopped thinking about it. This is one of the things about international touring and kind of doing fly date stuff. The more you think about it, the more it hurts. So just if you don't think about it, sometimes you'll will yourself into thinking you're even more exhausted than you actually might be, and there's always something left in the tank. So the point is, well, we're gonna play the show either way, so why should I waste time doing the math and being like, whoa, this is so messed up for my body and my internal clock? No, you just do what you can. Are you tired? Fix it. Coffee. Are you hungry? Fix it. I don't know, whatever you can kind of do to get through within reason. You kind of do it and lean in, because it's not really easy to kind of just hit the pause button and take a sick day when you're in the middle of a 40 show tour. So that's kind of how it goes, I think.
Was this the first time that you guys could actually get out? Because like you said, it was rescheduled. Because part of me is like, just wait till 2023 and do Greatest Generation, do the trilogy, do all 3 of them. But was this the first opportunity that you had to get out there?
This was the first opportunity. Also, what a twisted thought. And literally, honestly, I almost take offense to the idea of anybody saying they actually want 3 records back to back, because you can say that and sound like this incredibly brilliant idea. I know that you wouldn't last through 2 of those records, all right? I know how my lower back feels, and I know how I feel about my favorite band of all time, and any of them, I don't care who it is, I'm not lasting through 3 records. I'm not. I'm physically, emotionally, my ears aren't. I don't think I could do it, let alone I don't want to wish that on any of the bands that I respect, to try to play through 45, so you know what I mean, whatever that would end up being, something egregious. So no, sir. That was never in the cards. But this one specifically was, because Upsides and Suburbia came out pretty close together, in terms of the pacing. And then Greatest Gen, obviously, there was a bit more time and distance between that one and Suburbia. So it was kind of a thing where the growth as a band from Upsides and then Suburbia was all very quick and much more condensed. And we know that record, Upside specifically, was special to people. So we didn't want to skip over it. And that was a cool, fun way to see that whole transition play out across an evening, even though, as anybody that did see the show might know, that is not we did not do them in chronological order, and there was a method to that madness of a decision as well. But so it was fun for us. It's fun to walk back through it, and we definitely know that a lot of fans, even if they weren't around at that time, have kind of gone back and gravitated towards that and found some appreciation in that album too. So what the hell, we'll do both of them and then continue on, but it was lucky that any of them got to 2 digits, let alone even a single digit, with us still being out here doing it. So it was a pretty cool opportunity to kind of come back with a bang, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear you say, maybe you didn't want to do the 3 album run just because of, I don't know if the fans are ready for this, but also you have to pick support or openers and support for the tour as well. So you really can't just take the whole night unless it's truly dedicated to you guys. So another question that kind of comes to mind is, how do you pick the support? Is that something you guys have control over? Or is that, assigned to you guys through the label and management?
No. So that's something that for us is really important and near and dear to us, and is honestly one of the things that we have come to value very highly. Nice. About taking an opportunity to put some things that we think are both interesting and, oftentimes, yes, of course, there's like a bit of a Venn diagram that we run down in our head of an awareness that what will the people coming to the shows dig? What will they be into? Because we want it to be a solid night top to bottom, right?
Yeah.
And, across the whole evening. And that's kind of the point too. And I think, you look at it, especially coming out of and still being in touches of, this pandemic trauma that everybody's, it's probably tougher than ever to kind of reassure and or motivate people to come see live music, especially in a world where now streaming has became such a component for bands over the past 2 years. And even before that, picking bands to come out with is sometimes it's a selfish decision because you got to be out with somebody for a month, 2 months, and you want it to be people that you're going to enjoy the time with, and that's also important to us, that you get to pick who you're going to see every day and who you're going to, who are going to be the only other ones around there, especially with this kind of tour in your bubble. We were literally picking people to be in our bubble. And in the case of this tour, Spanish Love Songs was, as many people may know, when the pandemic hit 2 years ago, was on the tour with us that actually got shut down a week early before we could do all of the Northeast shows and our, hometown show and close the tour out. So that kind of felt, in an interesting way, like the right move to come back and make a statement and say, no, we're finishing this, but doing it like the real way, as well as the fact that band is incredible, and the last record they put out was amazing, and they're some great people, so it checked all of the boxes for us, and then down the line we kind of go, and curating, and Origami Angel is such a wild act to watch, especially as a 2-piece. I think they have some really awesome years ahead of them, and I would challenge anybody that came out and watched them, whether it's your cup of tea or not, to say that you didn't feel more charged up after their set, even if you're like, that's not for me, but tell me you weren't at least a little entertained, if not, really, really into it and kind of wowed and blown away and just having fun, right? So we want it to be fun. We want it to be meaningful, and also like the ethos of what our band is about, and the company we like to keep is also really important to us, and people that share in that and are going to be respectful and inviting to everybody and want to create that same kind of space. And they were all in that same way on board with us and all the things that we kind of asked of them to keep us safe and keep the tour going, to get across the finish line, which
Right.
was something that I think we, we set out, and in this day and age, nobody's really sure what that'll look like, or if you're going to have to cancel shows mid-tour or whatever. And we nailed all of them and finished the tour out, due in no small part to the fact that we had an incredible tour package, you know?
Yeah. A couple things you said struck me. One, you're picking people that you want to go on tour with, obviously, that you're going to be compatible with every day on a month and a half journey across the country. And that's probably normal times. That's difficult. But when you know it's going to be your tiny little bubble because of the pandemic, it's going to be even more difficult. And then to say, like, obviously you're trying to stay away from getting sick on this tour because it's going to shut down shows the way things are. And I mean, I know Anthony and I saw Thursday in Portland, Maine, late January, and they were in the throes of a couple of the opening acts helping out with the main Thursday set because people had tested positive and were sick, and the show must go on type deal. But totally, every day is how are we going to do this, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and we, like I said, we do not take it for granted. Someone could easily draw the short nose swab, I guess, at any given point, and so we had to keep a pretty tight ship and try and stay vigilant about it. And even tours that, try to do a good job still had that misfortune. And I mean, we want to say the show must go on. And all of us throughout our entire career have played through extreme illness and pain and all of that. But this is a little different because we're trying to keep a pandemic under wraps and, not give something potentially lethal or extremely problematic to somebody. So we're trying to keep that in mind too and balance that. And it's like, if you're singer, it's like, we're not going to do 2 albums full of Wonder Years karaoke if, our singer, test positive. And so it's, it's kind of just almost an all or nothing thing to some degree. So we had to be really careful, That sometimes meant not as much fun, not, don't get to go visit or see some of the people that we normally would be able to invite backstage to hang out or, go to a restaurant, bar, whatever, like the stuff that makes traveling bearable and fun, and keeps the days moving in an interesting way. So everybody has experienced it, and every band that is in our position, and for younger bands and smaller bands, there are challenges at every stage and every tier, all the way up to the large scale pop and arena acts, and their decisions. And this is, I'll take this opportunity, and then this is kind of the last thing I'll say about all that. But there are so many decisions and micro decisions and conversations that go on behind the scenes. I don't mean like for every tour. I mean like every hour of every day of every tour, where you're trusting people, whether it's your TM, your crew, venue staff, and you're having conversations where, it's really uncomfortable and not easy in the slightest, even just for ourselves. But there's so many more people involved every day and so many variables that get put into the mix. And I hope, and we're happy to do it, and we're lucky to get a chance to do it again. And we were happy to take it on and glad it landed the way it did. But let me tell you, that is one thing that if you're going to a show, especially right now, but even in general, I don't care how many people are there. I don't care how big the band is. I don't care what venue it's at. Just understand that it's way more than like the handful of people that you see on stage doing that. And we are so fucking lucky to have amazing, and I truly mean this when I say amazing, friends. And not a lot of bands get to call the people that work with them every day their friends, but we are, I have many times on many occasions been told, don't hire your friends. That's the worst thing in the world.
Right.
Well, we didn't listen to that piece of advice.
Nice.
And or, we, hired people that then became our friends, in spite of it all. So it's a mix of both, but we're very lucky, and they are the reason that we got through this. So, anybody else, whether it's Thursday, same thing. It takes a village, It takes people, other people on the tour to fill in, to make shit happen. So we were really lucky on that. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of a village, like I looked, we didn't get to attend the dates just because of kids and jobs and all that, responsibilities. But I mean, Webstall 1,500 cap, Boston House Blues 2,500 cap. Like, these are big venues. I mean, how do you know how big you are coming out of the pandemic? You know what I mean? Like, how do you know if people are going to show up? Because these are big venues and people showed up.
Yeah, that leans on a lot of back and forth with ourselves and previous touring history, and conversations with our booking agent as well. And just in general, taking stock of the climate, what other comparable tours might be doing, what's feeling. And I will say, as like kind of a peek behind the curtain, I think you were seeing a lot, and what we were really shocked with, and very pleasantly so, is, I mean, even as touring started to come back, like next year or last year, through the summer, and even like right up before the Omicron spike kind of came into play. I mean, it's still kind of the Wild West, and there was no real established new normal, just because things changed so quickly. But what a lot of people had been seeing is that, people are hopeful, and so they will see these tours get announced and they will buy tickets because they want it to be a reality and they want to hope that things will be in a good place. But they also still will say, even with that in mind, I'm going to make a game time decision based on, the state of things, right? Overall. And for a lot of tours and, across the touring industry, especially in club tours, spots like, places the size of like Webster and a lot of the House of Blues rooms, they were seeing anywhere from like 10, 20, even 30% like no show, wow. That people just, for whatever reason, decided not to come just because they didn't feel safe about it, or because they got COVID, and some of that is normal and always happens, right? It's like, you can't help if the last minute your kid gets sick, your car breaks down, life happens. But that was generally a thing that we were seeing. So we did go into it understanding that may be the case. And we were, I will say, pleasantly surprised that, these rooms were packed and full. Nice. and people braved it, and we thanked them. And I'm sure some people didn't feel comfortable, which is part of the reason why, as you mentioned, at Boston House of Blues, we decided and made the call early on in the tour because we knew this might be a thing, and we always try to accommodate as many people in our fan base and our community as possible, that some people might be immunocompromised or might not feel safe coming out to a show in their city. Or even when we started the tour, cases were still a bit higher out on the West Coast and in the Pacific Northwest. And that's fair enough that people are watching that and trying to make the best decision for themselves and their family. And, for that reason, we were like, hey, what's a good room that we could maybe live stream from? And the room and the people in Boston, we started putting our heads together, and that gave us enough time at the end of the tour to get all the logistics in place, and so that we could do that. So we were like, hey, if you couldn't make it, here's your chance to check it out. Right.
That's awesome. Nice. That is awesome.
And again, I'm sure plenty of those people would have liked to be there instead, but that was our way of kind of saying thank you for at least thinking about it, or trying if you couldn't get there, or if you maybe day of something happened, whatever. So we did that as well to try and mitigate some of that, but that was generally speaking how it was. So you don't really know, right? You know what I mean? This guy could fall the next day. You gotta plan for it still being up there when you wake up, right? So that's kind of, and that's what the whole thing with touring has been. You just gotta shoot your shot, and you can't just be like, well, I don't know, I guess I'll just wait until everything's 100% again. Clearly,
that may never happen. Yeah,
clearly that's probably not a good way to, to run any sort of business really in any industry, but especially this one. So you got to go out there and at least try it. And this was our way of trying it, and it did work out, and we were very lucky for it.
Yep.
Yeah, you said a lot there, and I'm kind of unpacking it in my head. But basically, the tour was routed 2 years ago and then rescheduled. But a lot of these venues are independent. So I work at a venue, so I know that protocols for independent venues differ 100% from Live Nation. Ticketmaster is basically vaccination 100%. So House of Blues, that's their protocol. Whereas a venue that's independent has a different protocol. So going into the tour routing, especially, you're just adapting to whatever protocols that, which could be different from a SoCal date to like a Northern California date, whether it's, social distancing or vaccination, proof of vaccination, and so forth.
Well, there's a lot in that question and a lot of specific nuances, as you probably understand working at a venue, that I don't necessarily want to generalize, too broadly. So I don't want to speak too in depth, because I'll probably miss something, and then, then we'll really be in trouble. But what I will say is, more so than that, I think we as people and as a traveling tour production are adapting to the different cultural norms that are shifting from city to city, state to state. Also sometimes heavily influenced by the regulations, that are or are not in place. That was one thing that was very important to us, was, again, going out there and knowing that we were the reason people would be coming out and coming to a show. We realized we cannot control the weather or every single possible variable, but we set out to say, hey, how much can we use based on what we know statistically to keep everyone that's coming to our show as safe as possible, and everyone that's working at the show as safe as possible, right? So for that reason, like the proof of vaccination or negative test stuff was really important to us, for the crowd, for the safety of everybody, and also for ourselves, because we started, trying to impress upon people sometimes, if there was any pushback anywhere, that, we didn't want to get sick, not because, we were concerned that it might be fatal or whatever to us, but it shuts down the whole operation, as we talked about a little while ago. Yeah. And
it's your livelihood.
Yeah, but honestly, all that aside, we spent 2 years not doing our livelihood in the conventional way. And there were a lot of people that had very high hopes to come see these records. And if we had to cancel one of those because somebody got COVID for an extended period of time and, and that shook everything up, that would not just be devastating, on the financial end, but also that's almost like a letdown to all of those people. So more weighing heavy on us than even the financial aspect of it was the fact that we wanted to get through it, because we knew it's we had been waiting to play for 2 years. Yep. And then we knew everybody else had also been waiting for stuff like this and shows like this to come back, and it was extra special. So we were lucky that we didn't have to bear any of that bad news, but that was, kind of waking up every day, keeping our fingers crossed and keeping it tight for that reason, and we tried to put protocols in place that would give us the best statistical possibility to do that, and make sure that these shows were not in any cause of any additional, hazard or outbreak. Now, you can't do anything about it if you roll into a city where, legally something can't be enforced. And I will say that sometimes it's very tough to go to a club or a venue that is not used to doing something a certain way and ask them to change their entire system and their entire ecosystem just to fit the needs of one tour or one package. That doesn't mean we don't try,
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
But sometimes we're faced, like I said, there's a million choices, in any given week. And that means ahead of time trying to, so many back and forths of well, how can we make this happen? What are you guys able to do or, willing to do in terms of who you can bring in or what that would mean or what the venue is set up for, right? And, we try and do a lot of stuff like that. We try and accommodate with gender neutral bathrooms and a lot of other light sensitivity warnings to have the show rated so that anybody that might be epileptic knows in advance, what the rating of the show is for our production. And we try. I'm sure there's stuff, that we miss or that we just can't get through, but we'll try again on the next one. And this one was a swing where we had some time to think about what the best swing was, so to speak. I don't think anybody gets it 100% right, literally ever, but we tried real hard.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Totally.
No, that's excellent. That's the most comprehensive answer I could, we could probably get here. especially with me working at the venue, because we get a lot of artists that would either have no regulation whatsoever, and we were going by California state guidelines. We're like, hey, it's up to, at this point, it's up to the artist, and anyone that didn't have, their own personal management, proof of vaccination, all that stuff. A lot of the fans were stoked on it, but there was another 50% of the fan base that was like, hey, I'm actually going to ask for a refund because I don't feel comfortable. So it's a dance. It really is a dance, especially in that phase.
Yeah. And you just have to be understanding and say, that's okay. If that's someone's line in the sand, I can't change it, but we're trying to make the best decision for as many people as possible. And that's a really interesting thing, especially considering when you're in a band and or play and perform music or create entertainment in a certain style that you decidedly know is not for literally everyone. So it swings all ways, but there's no animosity, at least for me, for people that make the decision and say, well, I don't want to come then, and be like, well, that is your choice, but we got to do it our way and the way that we feel safest doing it, because at the end of the day, it's us out there for all, whatever, like almost 2 months in a row. And so one night, this is what I kind of say. It's one night for someone at a show, but it's 2 months for us. So it's a lot harder to try and make standards and protocols for a 2 month span than it is one day, just like it is to eat healthy for one day versus 2 months,
Yeah.
So
totally.
So I always say, it's like, hey, if you're going to push back, that's fine. I'm always here. The older I get, the more understanding I try to be, and the more, you never know anybody's specific scenario or, what's behind their thought process. But I always try to never be too quick to judge or too quick to make comment, because you don't know what you don't know,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and yeah, you just get in trouble that way, right? You don't need that. None of us need that. Switching gears. So you're getting ready to go out. You're going to play the 2 records. It's going to go from, your typical 18, 20 song set list like you guys usually do to, balloons up to 30-ish. How do you prepare for that? You're relearning songs. You're obviously sequencing things. Like what is the mindset to try to tackle that?
Yeah. Slow and steady. I mean, you'd be surprised, though, when you dive back in to a record that's that old, that you wrote at this point, came out 12 years ago with something like Upsides, but we probably started writing some of the songs that were on that 13 and a half, 14 years ago, right? Like, we played them, some of those songs, so many times at this point, I'd say, in the thousands. You might think about it and be like, I don't even remember how that song starts. And then I'll put it on and you're like, oh, right. And then I just find myself halfway through, like I haven't played this song in maybe like 7 years or something. And I'm like, right, I didn't remember up here. My fingers do, though. Like, nice. And so some of it is just letting it, is just figuring out what you do intuitively remember, because you did it and wrote it once before. So that's internalized there. And then it's kind of filling in the gaps. And then at that point, it's just kind of getting in the reps. But I always say this too, like playing a song in your room or in the studio in headphones, relearning stuff is a lot different than when you get in front of a full venue and everybody's like singing back and you're trying to be engaged. So I feel like you always have to almost like over relearn the songs, because there's a lot of and very enjoyable distractions the second you start playing shows. So I always like to be in a position where I don't have to think about what I'm doing. And with a lot of the newer songs and the set lists over the years, so many of those are just, we could go another year without playing. And if we had to, there's a set list of like 15, 16 songs out there that we could probably all get together and play pretty convincingly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Without having run through them at this point. Some of the songs on those 2 older records, however, are not in that set list and really haven't been. So it was kind of focusing in on those and refining the mindset of like, oh, right, I did want to write like shreddy stuff at that point. Oh, right, that one is a lot faster than I remember it being. Okay, Well, all right, that's fun. And kind of just getting down with it and almost doing it in an enjoyable sense too, and not letting myself critique or judge too harshly what I was doing and the decisions that I made 10 to 15 years ago, and just letting it be a fun, nostalgic walk down memory lane and saying, hey, this might not be my favorite part that I've ever played or written in a song, but honestly, everybody's having fun and they really enjoy this song and it means a lot to somebody out there. So I'm going to put 110% into it right now and be okay with that and know that it didn't matter that what I thought about that part. It happened, and I'm happy to have it be a part of somebody's life and still relevant this many years later, So it would be very easy. We talk about this a lot, actually, where hindsight is 20/20 when you're a musician, and especially a band like ours where you've progressed sonically and just grown as people, as musicians, and the amount of influences that you take in over the years, especially since the beginning of the band and where we started and its origin. It's very easy to look back at the old stuff and be like, oh, that was shit, mate. Right. And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but you're always going to be your own worst critic. The real thing and the beauty of it that I realize is it doesn't matter what I think anymore. It just matters that we did do it and that it happened because we wouldn't get to this record that we're about to put out this year if we hadn't written those records, So why would I ever be mad or upset about what's on those records or embarrassed about them? It all ended up okay. Mm-hmm. I needed to write that part that I now look back on as being like, wow, that's extremely overly robotic and devoid of any kind of groove. I needed to have those moments to now have the perspective to do not that this many years later. So it's all good, but so I looked at it in getting ready for the tour, and I think a lot of us did, in being like, all right, got to strap up. Michael had to do some reps on the kit to really get back and fight in shape for the amount of fast beat energy he had to pull out on, and he chose to pull out on those early records, and that's a decision that now he's like, maybe not something I thought about having to do that many years later.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that, because we're all mid to late 30s, and we kind of grew up in tandem with Dan and his lyrics. Like, I remember those albums coming out, and I'm like, well, I just graduated college too, and I feel that way, but I don't feel that way now when I listen to him. But I can appreciate the content, and it brings me back. Like, when I listen to Upsides, when I listen to Suburbia, I'm like, well, shit, I lived with you, Tony, in that era. Mm-hmm. I lived with you, Nate, in that era, and like, I can relate. So does it kind of like transport you back in time a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, if for no other reason, but like, talking about them and, some stories that were dredged up as we went, in between songs. I think Dan did a great job on this tour, and even some of the conversations that we had and some of the stuff he shared on stage. Like I said, he's got a memory that's a steel trap, and really imagery laden with things that do bring us back to very specific events and occurrences that sum up a lot of that time in our lives and that time in our career that was very uncertain, but also so crazy exciting because we were out there doing what we wanted to do, and we were seeing that what was being said was resonating with other people of our age. And it's an incredible thing that I can't say highly enough how lucky we continue to be to see when people like yourself say things like, hey, it's crazy that every record has hit in a way where I totally get it and see myself in some part of that record. And I think that's a beautiful thing that, whether everybody's always going to have a favorite, sometimes those preferences are tied to nostalgia and time and place that record hit you. And that's totally understandable. It still astounds me that so many people are still here coming to see us, whether it's those old records or otherwise, are still actively invested and intrigued by what we're doing and what we're trying to say this many years later. So if for nothing else, even if we don't, but even if we hated those 2 records, I'd be like, you know what? I'm happy to go play those records for you guys, because if you're still around and still going to shows this many years later, happy to do it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But we also enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. So it was a win-win.
Man, Casey, so you're talking about a lot of things here. And I think what Tuan brought up was a good point, which is basically the songs are capturing a moment, as it came out, and kind of winding back, and especially the technical aspect of the songs. Like, you may be able to play better, and even the technological aspect of the equipment's gotten better. So, like, you can play the songs more, I don't know, to a bigger scale just based on your advancement as a musician. But there's another element to that in playing live, which is the physical aspect of going back on tour. So you're playing. I
see where this is
You're
going.
not playing shows. Pandemic's in full swing. You're kind of sitting around, maybe doing some live streams. But what is it like to actually go back on tour? Because we had Frank Turner on, and he's like, I was doing some live streams. It was all good. But actually going out and playing shows, like, holy shit, like, I need to actually work out for this. This is like a full body exercise,
Crushing. Is this the part of the podcast where you want me to tell everyone that it completely destroyed me physically?
How old are you? What's your date of birth?
Old enough that it hurt. That 2 months hurt. I came home. I pulled into the station in Philly those last 2 nights, probably with like a slight fracture in my foot, and and just feeling pretty messed up everywhere. Honestly, those last 2 nights, and again, I'm fine, and anybody was like, even, I had some family, at the Philly show, and they were like, yeah, I mean, you looked fine. I didn't even know. I was like, no, literally every step was like sheer agony. And for 2 nights in a row, I mean, I tried everything, and I like in between the encore break, I'd like come off and I'm like limping. I'm like, I actually can barely put any weight. So it was straight up just all adrenaline for those last 2 shows. That just kind of got me through it, because I was, kind of in my head. I'm just like, well, what am I going to do? Stand here? Yeah. I'll rest at, like, whatever. How bad could I really fuck this thing up? The answer was, I mean, like, pretty bad. But, in the moment, I'm like, but I'd rather have the memory of, like, giving it for, 2 nights in the hometown, after 2 years. I'll have some time to rest and recoup afterwards. So, I mean, it was taxing on everybody for sure. I still can't believe that Dan and Matt vocally got all the way through this thing, didn't miss a single show. Everybody gets hoarse, dried out, like here and there. But that is so many songs to sing, and especially Dan, who belts, as y'all probably know. Like that was really astounding. And I know, speaking of training, I mean, I know he did specifically kind of do a regiment where he would just hop on the Peloton and kind of just like scream the whole set for an hour while Pelotoning, So that's one way of doing it. I guess it wasn't ineffective. He made it through, and the voice held up. But yeah, there were definitely peaks and valleys emotionally. I mean, we got dinged up at a certain point. Dan had a pretty awful muscle spasm in the neck, like in the first week of the tour, that led to like a pretty wicked like cupping and like deep tissue massage thing just to get any kind of range of motion. So that was a rough week or two until full mobility came back for him, and I felt so bad. But I mean, he still sung through it somehow, and I'm sure every note was agony. But
Man.
Again, what are you gonna do? Like cancel? No.
Right.
There's there's 2,000 people out there. It's like I can technically sing. I can't maybe move as much, but it's kind of at that point just like, well, how can I get through this? And what's funny is we used to be like, oh man, that's fine. I just got to get through a half an hour of songs on Warped Tour. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm so like, I didn't sleep at all. I'm so messed up. And then you somehow get through it, and it's like 100 degrees. And then fast forward like, 10, 15 years later, and you're like, oh, how am I going to get through this? It's 2 records.
Yep.
It's like we're playing for like an hour and a half or something straight. There's no way. It's like, and then you just do it. And then I'm like, oh, I did it. So where there's a will, there's a way, and just kind of getting up. I don't know how into philosophy you guys are, but I've been on a Stoics kick, very stoic energy and vibe when it comes to just kind of putting one foot in the other when something's not feeling great.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that jogs my thought process here, because my day job, which we don't talk a ton about our personal lives, but my day job is sports medicine stuff. And so do you bring somebody with you guys, or do you just get treatment in a place? Like, did Dan find somebody in the city you were in to get a massage? Or, I mean, man, I see another career for me. I'm going to go on tour with bands.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Can you drop your digital card in the chat? Or
definitely, yeah, I can do that for you.
No, so we don't bring someone with us. However, in that case, we'll source people in whatever city. If we need a quick emergency, sports medicine doc, physical therapist, deep tissue muscle abuser, and which, we found one in Orange County and tried to get him right, and just, to put a hurting on him to try and get him through. But no, we don't have the bus space for it, realistically, one, and then that would be a nice luxury, but I don't think the venues are quite big enough for that yet, so to speak. But also, there's a need for everything, and we are very lucky to live in and tour in a place where this was pretty much mostly major cities. So if we needed something or someone specific, we could call ahead and try to find somebody or find a recommendation for that, and we do. We call on people from city to city, day to day, whatever it might be. If we can't figure something out, I mean, we kind of sourced it. We had to get tested to go up to Canada, and had to get the whole tour package all like tested and documented. And we were kind of just like, okay, does anybody know anybody that can do, this many legitimate, COVID tests and document them legally for the border? And we found somebody in that city,
Nice.
And it's the same way with ailments or, urgent care stuff and all that. But yeah, so nobody on retainer just yet in that department. So
well, I'll toss my card to you. And hey, now you know somebody else too. So, and I'm fairly well connected in my home state. So
yeah, there you go. At this point, it's just a foam roller and a cork ball.
I got both of those. I got both of those
that are very affordable. Honestly, yeah, one-time fee on those, but yeah.
Yeah, Podioslave's just a holding company for a bunch of different industries.
So, Casey, sometimes we source questions. This one comes from Alicia from Maine, who is my wife, who's upstairs. She asks,
"Oh, lovely.
How do you pack for a 40-date tour?"
Honestly, feverishly and at the 11th hour. Truthfully, there have been early on, I used to get really nervous about making decisions, and you got everything else out. All this stuff won't fit. I got to cut some weight. I got to cut some shirts. And now I'm just like, you know what? I've been on enough tours at this point where I packed a huge suitcase, huge duffel bag, and have not used or touched 65 to 70% of the clothes in there. So I just stopped caring. I'm like, I know I'm going to wear black shirts 75% of the days. It's going to be crazy cold for a couple days at a time here and there. So I'll just, pack one of all of those things. And then if I need something else, guess what? Once again, major cities, I can just go to a store and buy a sweatshirt again. You know what I mean? If I really, I'm like, man, I didn't pack my favorite slippers, and I just am not the same without it. I can't go on. There's a Target down the road, I'm sure of it. You know what I mean? At one of the upcoming dates, I'll just fix it. So I've kind of let go on that. There are some essentials. I take a touring rig, just my like an Apollo and stuff, just so that I can kind of like on off days set up in a hotel room, do some production mixing and kind of like remote call stuff. But so those are really like the only like essential things that's like it's more gear related anyway. The clothing stuff is just like by the time I actually like if we're talking like socks, underwear and t-shirts, I'm just like, you don't need that much. You know what I mean? Like, we have an off day at least every week. If not, you know, like can you go 2 weeks and then just do laundry? Oh, right. Laundry's the thing I can do. Yeah. Okay. Right. I'm just going to wear all of that same stuff again now because it's my favorite set. Everybody knows this. Even if, however you exist at home, you probably have a closet. All of you probably have a closet full of clothes and you wear the same 3 like pairs of jeans or shorts every day of your life. You know what I mean? Like, so it's the same kind of, it's the same thing.
Confirmed.
You know, you just gotta, the only real difference is that I have to account for the fact that whatever I bring for actual stage clothes are going to be destroyed. So like I just know that one tour is gonna take down a pair of jeans and a couple t-shirts that'll just never be the same.
It's like signs of getting older. Less is more. You're like, I don't need to pack that much. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I've done too many tours where I know I've overpacked, like objectively. So now I'm just like, I'll still overpack, but I'll spend way less time thinking about what, you know, like pining over those decisions. So
I heard you brought a suitcase to that cave show.
You know what? I probably did. There was probably one in the trailer, and somebody was probably angry about it. You know, I was never the one that like needed like a second like suitcase for like hair products and blow dryers. We weren't in that genre of like punk, pop, rock. You know, we didn't have like super pretty hair. I never really had a lot of hair. I've always kept it short. So, you know, had no real need for it. But I'm sure, I mean, there's a lot of people in our band. It's a lot of suitcases. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And when you pile and stack those things up, you're like, this is a nightmare in the back of the trailer, you know?
Casey, I'm kind of like trying to time travel here for a second. So pre-pandemic, streaming was definitely a thing, but now we're in 2022. You know, people are kind of holed up for a while, so streaming was kind of like your go-to. Like, I'm just going to play music all day. Why the hell not? I'm home anyway. Fuck it. Are there songs that kind of, I don't know, transpired more than in the past? Like, or maybe people kind of gravitated toward more so now more than ever?
Interesting.
I mean, we're talking 12 and what, 11 years? That's a long time.
Yeah, exactly. A long time.
Yeah. Oh, man. You know, I feel like the general... So we started the set with Came Out Swinging, right? Which has been a set staple for pretty much since that record came out, right? We've been very hard pressed to play, you know, like a full set in any capacity that hasn't had a need for that song. This one, it took a more literal turn. So things were quite explosive at the beginning of the set, starting with that, which is also in part, you know, why we were like, hey, Suburbia works as a nice way to start it if we're going to do the records in order. I will say I loved playing Hey Thanks on a personal level, specifically because we had Jur, who anyone on Instagram might know as Scottu Network, come out and play the trombone solo for a few dates when we were in Florida and moving north. So that was an extra special treat that when we started out the tour actually was kind of an unplanned thing and just fell into our laps. So I think that got a really good response, and that was fun for me to see happen and finally do that song, because I'm not sure we've ever done that song and actually had a trombone soloist live. Maybe once, might have been Matt that did it on the record. Might have done it once or twice, but anytime we've played that song, you know, it's typically just been like a little guitar or key solo thing in place of it. So that was extra special, and I think that seemed like we would get done with that, and I would see a lot of smiles. So that was a nice point in the evening every night for sure. that I think hit a lot of people. A lot of "this was played at our wedding," and I'm like, oh my god, that's insane.
That's crazy.
There's no other better songs. I mean, it's a beautiful song. I love it. I think I'm just too close to it.
Yep. All right. So thank you for giving us that, overview of getting back on tour, especially during a pandemic, which we're trying to get towards the end of here. But to get you guys back out there and in front of so many people and have a good time and it go off, that's pretty awesome. Let's talk. You've got the podcast. You're doing some coaching. You're doing all kinds of different things. What are you up to right now?
Yes, probably admittedly too many things when I stack them all up in a line. Yes, you mentioned first and foremost relative to this space, as we are on one right now, and you gentlemen are very familiar with the format. My studio partner, Tom Conran, and I have been delving deep into the creative process behind some pretty amazing releases, some of which are older, more iconic, and some of which are newer, and specifically taking the conversation from the vantage point of a number of different collaborators from week to week that have been involved in all of these releases on a show that we're calling The Record Process. And we launched season 2, which was the first group of songs that has been all interview based. And we've had some very fun, very enlightening, I like to think of it as a show that kind of runs a pretty nice cross section between informative, inspirational, educational, and also just kind of like something that can stir some hopefully creative ideas for musicians or just general fans of the process and people that make this work. So we spoke with actually Vince Ratty, timely enough, and we walked back through the journey of us working on the Upsides with him. He produced and mixed the Upsides. So that was a cool walk down nostalgia road with him about the making of that record. I had Derek and Brooks from Mayday Parade on to talk about their record that also had a nice little birthday, and they were playing live every night. Actually, while we were on tour, their self-titled record, that was a really cool one, telling us all about the writing of that and where that landed in their career. Yeah, just so many other people. I sit down with my singer Dan and talk about his side project, Aaron West and the Roaring Twenties, and his approach to lyrical writing and narrative and character perspective. So the idea being that we kind of take, the perspective of both artists, songwriters, producers, mix engineers, and even have a friend of mine, Jamie Coletta, who's an incredible publicist, manager, and creative thinker. We walk through her role in the setup of the 2016 Jeff Rosenstock record Worry, and just illuminating so many cool things for musicians and just general music fans, kind of a behind the scenes look at all of that stuff. So that's been really fun, and I hope to continue with that well into this year. It's been extremely fulfilling, and the response has been really cool as well. And that was a kind of galvanized out of, some process-based conversations, like I mentioned, that, I was having in the studio and or, with other bands that I was working with. And that's kind of the other side of the coin right now outside of Wonder Years, like y'all alluded to, which is, me doing a lot of both remote and in-person production work with other bands, artists. I do some mixing stuff on the side while I'm home. I'm actually in the midst of wrapping up 3 different projects in that world, and that's been very fun, as well as seeing a lot of the production work that I've done over the last year or two start to come to fruition and be released this year. So that's all extremely exciting, and the calendar seems to just be filling itself up for the rest of the year. and with some stuff that's really cool, both inside the general punk genre and rock framework, but also outside in some really cool, more like lo-fi and indie rock adjacent spaces. So it keeps things diverse for me too, which is very interesting. And then finally, you mentioned the coaching stuff. Life can lead you to some interesting places, and one of those places also kind of was one of those places that I found myself, I guess, a couple years ago, having been working out of the studio and working, with some clients recording different bands, was the fact that a lot of younger bands would come in. We would put some work into a couple songs, an EP or a whole album, and I'd find myself later on getting, calls or texts, just random questions about release process, like the overall vision of it, what's the best strategy here, and some of the things, I didn't always, there's no one right answer, that fits every band's model. So I started just kind of offering, to kind of have them come in, before, or let's take an hour after the next mix session, or, when we wrap up tracking, and we'll kind of sit down and start talking through maybe some of the business tendrils of what the album can do for you and where you see it going, and how to best do it, or what the strengths and weaknesses of the band are in its current form, and where you're trying to go. And when the pandemic hit, we had to shut down the studio, couldn't do in-person sessions anymore, right? So had to kind of wipe the recording calendar in person for a while. And, I looked around and had a couple interesting opportunities come about, where some of those clients and some people that I didn't know were curious about having some more structured long form conversations about their projects and things like that. And, fast forward, here we are like a couple years later, and I've found that I really enjoy trying to bring forward any anecdotal value I can to other musicians, whether they are in the same genre spectrum or the complete opposite end of it, because I just love the idea of developing something holistically from a, sonic standpoint, and also from a creative standpoint, and, and figuring out how to present that to an audience, how to find an audience for it, and how to pull out some of the unique, authentic parameters that each person and band kind of has. So it's been fun. It's, it looks a lot like this, right? Sometimes it feels informal. Sometimes organization is top of mind, but it's been something where I've truly learned that I learned so much more by trying to teach and give back in a way, and just have some conversations and that are really inspiring too. I seem to always walk away with cool ideas that I'm like, man, I had no idea that was going to come out, but here we are. And then some people that I've known and been working with for 2 years, I'll be like, how did I never know this like incredible nuanced fact about you that everybody should know, that is just your fucking superpower, right? And you were just hiding it because you never thought of it that way. And I love the moments that this kind of stuff creates. So I've been doing a lot of that, when I have time as well. And it's been really fun. And because I can also kind of continue to do that while I'm on tour too, a little bit as well. So it's a nice flexible way to build in some cool creative think time for me as well.
Nice.
That's great. I mean, I think people respect you because you're not an industry plant. I mean, you came from the VFW to, Boston House of Blues, 2,500 cap. The Cave. There you go. You came from the Cave.
Started from the Cave. Now we're here.
And you have to put in those miles, I think, to get that education. So I think, in music terms, you have your doctorate, so people look to you for that.
Yeah, maybe. And again, I don't claim to, doctorate or not, I don't claim to know it all, but I love finding a way to explore it, and or putting some experiments, in place to test some hypotheses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and I think sometimes that's maybe more important than having every answer. And that's been a real incredibly illuminating life lesson that I've learned through the last couple years. Again, too, I think, I had a buddy of mine, his name's Carl Bonner. He's an incredible producer. He's based out of like the Philly area, like outside like Lancaster. And him and I talk a lot, actually. And he's, speaking of podcasts, anybody that, if you're interested, he's got an incredible series that's called Thanks for Thinking, a podcast where it's, I think, what does he say? It's kind of like I'm going to butcher it, but it's incredible. It's like if a music business podcast and a meditation app had a baby.
Nice.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. He's an incredible thinker too, and a great friend. And he just recently posted something online that, speaking about the idea of imposter syndrome. And I think that's something that plagues a lot of people. And I think him and I are actually maybe going to have a chat where I have a feeling we're going to dive deeper into that tomorrow, perhaps online. The point being that you don't have to have all the answers, and you can still be valuable and be respected, and, someone that even doesn't have the answers, their perspective on something, answer or not, might be valuable to you. So I'm just here for that journey and love that, and that plays into Wonder Years a whole lot. And now I see it play out every day outside of Wonder Years too. So
Totally.
So it's cool. Yeah.
Well, and you explained something that I do in my career every day. A lot of people here, they'll learn by doing, but not a lot of people realize you can learn by teaching. And I pick stuff up all the time from somebody that I'm, maybe taking under my wing to teach, whether it be a college student or, another professional in my field. So you can totally learn by teaching, because they have an idea of something as they're on their way up that you maybe never thought of, or you could tweak. It's amazing to find those things and learn more about yourself just talking to somebody else that's doing the same thing, but maybe from a different aspect.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, so the original intent of, this conversation, and y'all had brought up, the tour that we just did and the travel and the expansive amount of time spent on the road. And I will say that is one of the greatest things that I think has made me the individual that I am, maybe the musician that I am, and whatever else I might become in the future, has been forged through that travel and that learning, not only by doing and by traveling, but by interacting with people from all over the country and the world. And that is one thing where I've been lucky enough to get outside of, the small circle that I grew up in and see some varying viewpoints. And even if you don't agree with them, or, if you keep an open mind, you're going to learn something just by seeing different things and knowing that something else existed that you had no idea about the day before. And that's kind of, that's kind of the challenge that I love about working with so many different artists and doing that kind of stuff and taking that kind of teaching or like mentor role is, hey, this is actually a weird case where X, Y, and Z advice or perspectives that we've done actually in no way apply here, so we've got to figure something else out that feels right, and that helps me stretch and use what I know and forces me to extrapolate on it too, because I think at a certain point it's very easy to just sit back and, as a band, and rest on your laurels and just be like, hey, we can just do what we've been doing, like rinse, repeat, put another album out or whatever. But that's never been the way we wanted to function as a band. I think that much is clear if you listen to Upsides and then listen to Sister Cities or the next record. And I think it's the same way with whatever you do.
Totally. Casey, thank you for coming on with us tonight. A lot of fun. Excited to talk to you, and this was exceeded expectations.
Well, it was my pleasure as well. And I did have high expectations, but yes, it may in fact have exceeded mine as well. So thanks again, fellas.
And the Wonder Years, if you want to check out the podcast, it is The Record Process. It's Casey with Tom Conran. And on the production engineering side, it's True Level Studio. So you can find that. And where are you located geographically?
I am coming to you from just outside Atlanta, Georgia now, actually. I have relocated as of last year, which is the first time I have actually, for as much traveling as I've done, the first long-term relocation. I've been a Philly guy, my whole life until recently. So this is a whole new world down here. The pollen count much higher right now.
I bet.
But no, it's beautiful. I mean, Georgia this time of the year is honestly incredible, and it's like a very exciting new chapter for sure. So if anybody's in Atlanta, and you're trying to do stuff, holler at me. Tell me where the good food's at.
We have a friend.
we got a
we have
guy.
a friend
We got
outside.
Greg.
Greg's from living outside of Atlanta right now. So I'm sure we could hook you guys up.
Oh yeah, hook it up. See, this is what I'm saying. It's a small world. Yeah.
Yep.
He's a guitar virtuoso too, so you might.
Greg Bergdorf, formerly of Zebrahead, now in a jazz trio outside of Atlanta,
Okay, great.
Georgia.
Well, if he's a virtuoso, maybe I can take some lessons or something.
Dude,
yeah, set it up.
dude can
Let's have
play.
a nice little meet cute. That's great.
Thanks, Casey.
Thanks, Casey. We'll talk to you next time.
Awesome, Casey. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.